We specialise in protecting, preserving and growing your wealth. Black Tower Financial Management, the team you want by your side. Visit blacktowerfm.com.
BayRadio International on a Thursday, and joined now by Christina Brady from Black Tower Financial Management.
When you get a pension in the UK, when you decide you take your pension, at the moment you can take 25% tax-free. Conservatives have already capped that, so no one could take more than 268,000 tax-free. Not that many of us got that much to take tax-free, but it looks like Labour could reduce that tax-free lump sum even more. And it depends how far down they go. Also, pensions. If you have a pension in the UK, it is not included in your inheritance tax calculations. So basically, if you die and your estate is held in pensions, then there is no inheritance tax to pay, whether you're over the allowance or not. So Labour are saying they are looking at ways to include the value of pensions in the estate for inheritance tax, which will have a huge impact, because we've got products called like QNUPs, etc., which you take your assets and you place them in a pension pot. So you can property in there, you can put various assets in there, and it protects you from inheritance tax in the UK if you go above the thresholds. They're talking about getting rid of that, or, imposing some sort of tax on it. So that could really impact how much the older generation have to pass on to their children and their grandchildren. And let's be honest, their children and grandchildren most probably need the money, because nowadays there's no golden plated pensions in employment. House prices are through the roof. Most people can't afford them. So that could have a really, really big impact on people, and also reducing people's personal tax allowance and saving tax allowances. He's talked about doing that. So we'll have to wait and see what does come out. But if they do follow through with those, it doesn't bode well if you've worked hard all your life and you've put savings away and you've put lots of money into your pension pot, hoping that you can hand it on to other people. Inheritance tax free. And inheritance tax is a bugbear. You work all your life, you work blinking hard to save money to buy a property, and then when you die, they've taxed you your whole blinking life. Everything, literally everything you do is taxed apart from breathing. I'm sure if they could do that, they would.
They are the certainties, aren't they? Death and taxes, they say.
Yeah, it's something that you're certain of in life. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in the UK.
OK, what about bankers? Same, because Jerome Powell, the US Federal Reserve chief, has been fueling hopes of interest rate cuts from the Fed. World stocks have extended their rally that we've seen in recent days. Weak US data, apparently, helping that. I'm not quite sure I can get my head around that, though. But
no,
markets now pricing...
How does it help?
I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But markets pricing in a 74% probability of reduction in September, up from 65%. And of course, the old adage that if America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. And also, I would imagine they might be wanting to do something just before the election. I don't know. You
see, I think they were holding off because they didn't want us to be seen to be influencing the election. But after Biden's abysmal performance, they may do a rate cut in September to try and make things look good and to try and encourage people to feel more positive about what's gone on. We'll have to wait and see. But I think if the US cuts rates, as I said, we may see a small cut in the UK. We've already seen the ECB doing one. I'm not sure there's many more to come this year. I think inflation is still there. It's still in the background. It's still not stable. And obviously we're in the summer at the moment when energy costs are low. Once we get into autumn again, energy costs could rise again, food costs could rise, and it could push inflation back up again. So I don't think anyone wants any knee-jerk reactions. I think a small cut could come, but it's not going to affect anyone who's borrowing money or anyone who's saving money.
Well, the headlines seem to be talking about the price of basic food soaring by 2030, and we're talking the likes of olive oil and baked beans. I didn't think they could go any higher.
I didn't think olive oil had it. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think, grow an olive tree and see if you can make your own oil, if that's possible. No, it is ridiculous. But then, I don't know if anyone's been watching it, but I started watching Jeremy Clarkson's The Farm. And when you understand how much they get from selling a cow to a supermarket, they get something like £1,800. And yet if you manage to sell the parts of the cow yourself, if you've got a farm shop, you're going to get about £10,000. So how much do supermarkets make? farmers should be paid a good amount for what they produce because they keep us fed, they keep us alive, and they are the backbone of the country. And I think we have huge problems. And I don't think any government is tackling those sort of problems at the moment. I think as much as I didn't want to watch this programme, it was very enlightening. And I think it did bring to the fore how much we need farmers and how much they are undervalued and how hard their lives are. And I can understand now why they all went out in their tractors and they all did demonstrations across the world, not just in the UK, not just in Europe, in America, in Canada and everywhere else.
Yeah, we were talking about the recent Eurozone inflation figures that were out. The headline saying at 2.5, but actually when you make the figures actually tell the truth, we're looking at more like 4%. The ratings agencies don't let them get away with it, though, do they? Because you got people like S&P sending debt warnings, not just to France and other top economies across Europe, but also to the US as well, which is worrying.
Oh God, the US debt is out of control. Biden's just spent, given money away to different countries across the world, and money's just disappeared. No one's accounting for it, and the debt is just going up through the roof. It's just ridiculous how countries can get into so much debt. Who's buying the debt for a start?
Well, we know the Chinese hold a lot of the United States debt.
Oh, they do. The Chinese hold most of the debt. They've got control over most countries, which is rather alarming.
I mean, how will that help them, though, if nobody can pay it? How does it help?
They hate China. If you look what they're doing on EV vehicles, why don't they just default on all the debt? And then China won't have anything to hold over them. We've got the whole EV saga where the EU has from Friday, it will increase the tariffs on electric vehicles from China, despite the risk of a trade war. So they're going to range from 17 to 37.6%. And that's on top of the 10% they already put on as duty, although it's far short of the 100% that the Americans put on. But as you said, if China own most of the debt, why don't they just default on it and start again from a clean slate?
The EU obviously
Have we ever thought of that?
That's what I figured. It's all well and good them having all the debt, but if you can't pay it, then it's
exactly.
All null and
it's
void.
Like being bankrupt. If you get bankrupt, they put together this package, and usually they write off the debt, and you can't borrow again for the next, 4 or 5 years, and then you start off again. It'd be lovely to scrap everyone's debt and say, right, no one can borrow any money for the next 5 years. You make do with what's coming in and see how we all cope. If we are not paying all the interest on all the debt we owe, maybe countries would be able to actually manage to fund themselves. You never know. And if, they didn't keep on shelling out money, giving it left, right and centre to lost causes.
They're not worried, though, are they, the EU, about any fight back on putting the extra duty on? I'm not quite sure why they're not worried about it. I think they would be.
We'll wait and see. Let's see if they actually follow through, because if you remember when everything kicked off with Russia and Ukraine, the EU wasn't going to buy any energy from them and etc., but it ended up doing it, and the energy still came into Europe and to the UK at a higher cost, but it went via India. So there are ways around it. So let's see what happens there.
Well, there's something else that the EU have been working on recently, trying to close some of those loopholes, but it all seems to be a little bit too little too late.
It is. It always is. They always say, we'll look into it, we'll sort something out, we'll learn our lessons, but they never learn their lessons. It's very sad. It happens time and time again. But that's politics for you. And, you steal from Peter to pay Paul, and yet you still don't get anywhere. So we'll have to wait and see. But if you look at world debt, it is absolutely astronomical, the amount of debt that is out there. Each country, global debt is at record levels.
And they said it was always going to be that post-pandemic, so as if we were meant to just swallow it and not worry about it. But
they did. They said it won't only you be paying for it, it'll be your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. So they're not talking about this debt going away in 2050. They're talking sort of 75, 100 years before they get anywhere near to do anything with this debt. And by that time, God knows where the world will be, but I won't be here.
Oh, I don't know. No, we won't be, will we? Okay, let's have a look at some people who have been doing okay. Let's start with Revolut, because we've spoken about them before in this slot. Just made a record profit last year, 438 million pre-tax profit last year, up from a loss of 25 million in 2022. Revenue almost doubling to 1.8 billion. That's not bad, is it, given that they don't hold the British banking licence either at the moment?
No, but they've got a licence within the EU, haven't they? So that's not a problem. It's still guaranteed if you put money in there. I think people are just fed up with traditional banking. You know, you've got these banking, you've got Wise, you've got Revolut, you've got N26, I think it is, and various other ones, where it's a lot cheaper. You can do multi-currency stuff. It's so flexible, it's online, it's easy to understand. So people are just going for it. I can understand why. Banks make things too difficult.
Yeah, the charges that you get from banks, for what? You're paying for everything. You can't do anything anymore at the bank. You've got to do it all online.
No, and like the other day I got my wages in and one of my colleagues did, and the bank deducted, 15, 20 euros in charges for processing our wages. It was like, what the hell is going on? Don't you charge enough? It is just they're greedy. We know that. We know banks are. But you're talking about people. Look at Amazon, Bezos, whatever it is. He sold over £4 billion worth of shares.
Yeah.
Recently, when the stock hit its all-time high. Maybe you could pass some of that my way. I wouldn't mind, a couple of 100 million. I wouldn't object.
Not doing too badly, isn't he? Wasn't it 30 years, I think, since he founded the company in his garage? He had a good idea and it worked, didn't it? Wow.
Yeah, it did. No one else had done it. Good on him. But, that's a lot to sell at the peak of the market.
I think he's second most richest.
He's going to go on a spending spree.
He's second most richest in the world, isn't he? I think Muskie's back on top at the moment, but they keep swapping places. Yeah, they switch places. Yeah, it's like dominoes, really, isn't it? So that's that. And also, while we're on air, there's been, which will affect people who've done investments, actually, there's been some breaking news. Utmost, which is a company that has financial products, in late 2021, they bought a company called Quilter. Which was a financial company which people did investments. So you had an investment, you put it in one of their products, and they have products that are Spanish tax compliant, French tax compliant, whatever. So Utmost bought them. Utmost have announced today that they are now acquiring Lombard International Luxembourg, which is another, obviously, company that offers these products. And it's one that one of the financial advisors in Spain uses all the time. They only use that product. I'm not sure what impact that's going to have on that company, because up until now, they've really had exclusive rights to use Lombard, and it's been very difficult for anyone else to use them because there was a part ownership deal. I don't really understand it. But now Utmost have announced that they're going to acquire Lombard International in Luxembourg. We'll have to wait and see what happens there, because when they bought Quilter, they kept some of Quilter's products and they got rid of others, and in some cases they just merged the products together and they changed the pricing structures and everything else. So that is quite a big deal within the financial advice world at the moment, especially internationally. I'm sure I've seen that name on some of the paperwork I've got. I'm going to have to go and check.
No, not with me, you haven't.
Oh, not anymore.
You've got Quilter. Utmost, yeah, you've got Utmost because they bought
right.
Quilter.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I thought.
So that is a big announcement. It seems like Utmost is set on becoming the key player in the market, if not the only player in the market, which...
It's not always a good thing.
It's not a good thing because it's a monopoly. It means there's no one to compete on charges. And we have to use the products that are out there that are approved by each individual country that give people tax advantages and benefits in those countries. But I think it isn't good when there is one provider. And the way this is going, it looks like Utmost is going to be that person. And we have seen it with when they bought Quilter, charges did increase. We had problems with service levels because with the merger. And this is another big merger. So we'll have to wait and see when it goes through. It does take a while. They've just announced it today that they are acquiring it. They've put out all the press releases. So they've announced their acquisition, and they expect it to be completed by the end of 2024. So that actually isn't that far away.
No, it isn't, is it?
Less than 6 months, and it's quite a big merger. It's a company that's been out there for a very, very long time. So they're saying, obviously, Utmost are trying to sell it as a really good thing. They're saying it will strengthen its position and enhance its ability to serve clients' long-term needs.
Well, it will without any competition, won't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see there. But I thought I'd announce it because it's just come up, literally. And so anyone out there knows, if you've got anything with Lombard International, that will be changing to Utmost. Well, the only good thing I can say is it will open their products up if they keep them to the rest of the market. And at the moment, most of Utmost products are out of Isle of Man, or if you're in Europe, Dublin. So it will now give them a good base in Luxembourg as well. And as you know, both Dublin and Luxembourg are very, very financially sound, very heavily regulated, especially for financial products. So it'll mean people can have a choice between the two centres, and that will be very, very good.
Something that's been up and down, and something actually that David in Italy messaged about ahead of us talking today, was Nvidia, which is now the biggest company in the world, and the fact that everybody is looking at them thinking, wow, they're only on the way up, and then all of a sudden their shares dropped by around 16%, but they seem to be going up and down. That was following a sell-off by the CEO of some shares, wasn't it? But they're back up again today, along with Tesla, and they both seem to be a little bit volatile, but they don't seem to drop too far, do they?
No, they are volatile. And, invest, as I say, when you're investing, just make sure you've got diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, no one should invest wholly in Tesla, wholly in this company. Always make sure that if you take high risk things like these, you then counter that with something that's less risky. So when things maybe don't go so right for these companies, you've got something to fall back on. And I think that is the key to anyone investing. Unless you've got huge amounts of money and you don't mind the volatility, it doesn't affect anything. If you've got multi-millions, it doesn't affect you really if the price goes down or up, because mostly it's money that you don't need that you've invested in these companies, because the money you do need, you'd have invested in something a little bit more secure that wasn't so volatile. And that's the same for normal people. You have to think of that. If you do have an odd 5,000 or 10,000, it's the same with Bitcoin. You put your money there, but expect it could be very, very volatile.
With us talking about the world of finance and business this afternoon is Christina Brady from Black Tower Financial Management. Christina, perhaps we could start the final section by telling David in Italy why it is still worthwhile investing some money in the stock market. He's not convinced that it's a great idea. Down the years, he's seen a number of things happen, not just Black Monday, but other blips. The CEO of Nvidia selling off shares that we were talking about earlier, and feels that it's maybe not for him.
There's always those that feel that way. And if they do, don't invest in the stock market if you're not convinced. But, I've got numerous clients who have been with me 10, 15, 20 years and have put in money, taken maybe half that money out as cash and still have more money than they put in. And I can't see any other way of doing that. You could do it in property, I suppose, but then you have an asset that is not liquid. At least with most investments, if you invest wisely and you invest in the correct companies, you have liquid assets. And if you don't go for anything too funky, the sort of things he's talking about, I think you need obviously to diversify. Most people have some property, have investments and have other things. What I found was after 2007, 2008 crash, I had lots and lots of people coming to see me in my office who were property rich, so they were asset rich but cash poor. Some of them didn't have 2 pennies to rub together because everything was in property. The property crash meant they couldn't liquidate their assets and they were completely stuffed. So I think you have to be careful. But no, if you don't want to invest in, don't. Stick with whatever you feel is good for you. I would never, ever try to force someone to invest, but I think it is very, very good. I think there are still some good opportunities out there.
And there are different ways that you can do it. You don't have to go all out and, like you said, so at least diversify, spread it across different things.
You've got cautious risk, you've got balanced risk, you've got growth, or what he's talking about is speculative. And we have very, very few clients who are speculative. Most of them are of a balanced nature, and a balanced portfolio, it usually gives you good returns. Obviously, 2022 was a dire year for everyone when the COVID hit home really, really badly. But since late 2023, the markets have been going up. I think the S&P, the American markets, have got more upside to them. If you look at most US presidential elections, after the election, most of the indices go up about 5 or 10%. So you could position yourself there to take benefit of that. Also, I have lots of clients and I recommend to them infrastructure funds, which are actually non-correlated to the stock market. However, these funds have taken a real battering once interest rates went up, because most infrastructure funds rely on taking out loans to get these projects off the ground. And obviously, with interest rates rising, they haven't been taking out the loans because the repayments have been too high. Now rates have stabilised and gone down. Infrastructure funds are growing again. And the US is legislating to spend approximately $2.2 trillion over the coming decades upgrading the country's infrastructure. So this is things like they've got crumbling roads, we know that, bridges, water systems, and it's not only traditional companies that benefit, and you've got innovators as well. There's one company in America, which I'm trying to think of what it's called. I think it's called Advanced Drainage Systems, which makes storm drains, and it makes them faster and cheaper than anyone else, using less environmentally not friendly so it makes
carbon
it in an
efficient,
environmentally friendly way. It's greener. So the American passes that's going to be a huge impact. And if you look across Europe, across the UK, infrastructure is a very, very big thing. As I said, it has suffered over the last couple of years with high interest rates, but we are noticing the turnaround now. And I did tell people to hold on to the infrastructure, even though it was negative, sometimes down 14, 15, 16%. Because the upside will way outweigh that when it does take off. So that is some good news to look forward to. With regards to investing, there are certain markets as well that are still quite volatile. China, I'm not sure if I would recommend anyone investing in China. India's doing very, very well at the moment. But again, that is highly volatile. I remember a few years ago, someone wanted to invest it was more than a few years ago, pre-COVID in India, and lost quite a bit of money. But as I said, investing should be tailored to your attitude to risk. Now, if someone come to me and said they wanted to put all their money in Tesla, I would say no. If they insisted, they would have to sign a disclaimer saying we've taken no advice from you. We've gone out on our own. If we lose money, we understand we could lose 50, 100%. The same with other companies out there. There are certain companies that are very, very volatile, some of them highly illiquid. So if you needed to get your money out, you couldn't. And generally, as a general rule, I would say in 99% of cases, we would not invest in those companies, not straightforward. They might be a small percentage of a portfolio, say 1%, but then the rest of it is much more liquid, highly regulated. And therefore, if people need to get their money out, they can.
See, I've been looking at a Rolls-Royce Black Rose drop tail, but it's a little bit out of my budget at 30 million.
I've told you, you're not getting any money out of your pension. You're not old enough yet, so just carry on working until I can tell you can stop working, okay?
Fabulous. Christina, how do people get in touch?
Right, if they want to get in touch, they can email info@blacktowerfm.com, or they can email CB, little c, little b, for Costa Blanca at blacktowerfm.com. You can always call the office, which is 965058212. And just to remind you, we are not just in Spain. We're across Europe. We're in the UK. We're in the US. So if you have any queries at all, anything, if you come through, we'll pass you to the best person for you. We've got offices across Spain, Barcelona, Murcia, Costa Blanca, Costa del Sol, Madrid, etc. So, we will have someone to help you across France, everywhere. Or you can also go onto the BayRadio website. You can click on our logo, and that should take you through to the Black Tower website, which is blacktowerfm.com. And then you can click on locations. It will give you our details, or you can fill in one of the contact forms. That comes through to us, and someone usually gets in touch with you within 24 hours to find out exactly what you need and put you in touch with the right person. Or you can email studio@bayradio.fm, and they will pass any inquiries on to me. Or you can WhatsApp BayRadio. I don't know their number.
It is 684 455 844.
And they will pass those on as well. So if you have any questions regarding pensions, investments, living in Spain, living in France, what do you need to do if you're moving over here from the UK or even the US, we can help you, and we can make sure that you are as tax compliant in the country you're moving to, and you don't get any nasty shocks or surprises.
Listening and exceeding expectations for over 31 years. Black Tower Financial Management, the team you want by your side. Visit blacktowerfm.com.